morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me begin by saying this. Your pastor there, Pastor Sonny Adeniyi, has a passion for wealth creation and wealth building. I'm saying that not just because of today. I think it was about 10, 15 years ago. He called me. They had this group that was trying to be entrepreneurial within the Calgary community. And I remembered I went to address them at the time. I don't know whether he remembers this. I don't quite remember the name of the group, but it was more like Millionaires Club. No, I changed it to Billionaire. That's actually the key. So they told me they were the Calgary Millionaires Club. I said, no, you are the Calgary Billionaires Club. You need to change that. Think higher. Think higher. When you think higher, you achieve. When you go for the moon, you reach the sky. You know that. Anyway, that was just an aside. His beautiful wife, Pastor Fola. I watch her from afar. This woman can sing. This woman can sing. She belts it out. I will tell you something as an aside because that's not why we're here today. I have a daughter who sings professionally, and I think you should meet her. I think you should meet her. She went to school, like every Nigerian father does. You have to go to school first. She's got 2 degrees, but she's a professional singer. She actually was a grandstand performer at the Calgary Stampede this year. And she has a show on a cruise ship. You should meet her. Because I think she will be inspired by you. Having said that, thank you for inviting me. I don't see my presentation. Do I need to make that happen? Okay, so when Pastor Sonny called me, he said to me, we're doing this entrepreneurial program, and they gave me that topic from employee to employer, and I think it's so apt. That is who I am. That is what happened. You've heard my story. Actually, when I was listening to my story, I said, that can't be me. I'm just a little guy. I'm just a little guy from Nigeria, from Igbobi. You know, I'm not that guy. But the point is, somehow, the Lord has been very merciful to me and my family. And whatever you do, it's not just your power. It's not your might. No matter, some people try so hard, they don't accomplish. So whatever you have, you need to praise Him. That's very, very important. So I can't just come here and tell Buga and tell you this is who I am. No, it is someone smiling and shining His light and grace upon me. Having said that, let me introduce this topic. My personal story. You've heard it. Why am I here? Who is this guy coming to tell you how to be entrepreneurs? What has he accomplished? Well, after I heard that, I don't think I need to tell you anymore. I came here. The only part I'm going to tell you, my parents sent me to school. For some reason, after I finished A-levels, I knew I wanted to go abroad. And my father put all kinds of barriers in my way. He said, you have to be able to, those days, I've been here 42 years. 42 years ago, people who come abroad are not the brightest, except if you come for your master's degree. It's people who cannot enter university in Nigeria. When you remember the good old glory days of Nigeria. So my father put all kinds of barriers in my way. He said, you have to qualify to go to university in Nigeria. You have to do this. You have to pay for your own ticket. So they got me a job at the Federal Ministry of Internal Affairs. I was a young kid with A-levels. I was 18 and I was Assistant Executive Officer. You know how they give you titles those days? And I was most of the people that worked there, they had O-levels, WAEC. And I was this young kid who was the head assistant executive officer. It was tough for me to manage them, but I was only there to collect money to pay for my school fees, my plane ticket to come abroad. In any case, I was young, I was making money. As my mother would say, you are never balanced. You know what balance means. You never have, even though I lived at home, it's also part of this entrepreneurial talk we're having. So after about a year and a half, I still didn't have enough money for my plane ticket. My mother called me, said, don't tell your father, oh, she gave it to me. She gave it to me. So I went to my dad, okay, Dad, I have what it takes now. Okay, I'm going. So the rest is history. My parents sent me to school here. When I think back, I'm like, what gives these people courage to send a 19-year-old abroad? 19 kid. Those days, to all of you, if you saw another black person over there on the street, you would cross the street to come and say hello. There was not enough. There were about 100 Nigerians in Calgary when I came. Just imagine that. And you may have heard some of these stories before. I'll just say about 99% of them did not have corporate jobs. Most of them drove taxi. Some worked in hospitals as janitors. Some worked in CP Rail. Those were the early days of Nigerian immigration. But somehow, I went to school. Because I went to school, some of what I'm going to talk about, I networked. My classmates were Canadians. I hung out with them. So when it was time to leave, in fact, it was one of them that actually told me, a company called JOICC. I didn't put that here because it was insignificant. I worked for a company called JOICC. I worked there for like 6 months and I left for bigger and better things. I went to General Motors, Acceptance Corporation. Again, first black person to be in these places. Okay, young kid, I was so determined. I remembered when I did, I'm saying it to inspire you, please, not to brag, because when you hear some of our stories, you can, there's enough opportunity. I'll bring it to today. So I went for the interview at General Motors. I was so young, so vibrant. The manager looked at me. He said, I like you. And they asked me all the normal interview questions. What would you do? Well, all these questions they asked me. I did that. Then he said, one more thing. Do you have any questions for me? I said, yes. He says, what? He said, when do I start? You know what he said? I love your spunk. You got the job. That's how I got the job at GMAC. That job propelled me to whatever I became. Because General Motors Acceptance was the finance arm of GM. So when you go, I don't know if they still exist. When you buy a car, you know now when you go to Ford Credit and all that, this was General Motors' credit. So I did that. But when I got there, it was an old boys network. I could not survive. So, one thing I didn't tell you. My parents sent me here to come and do law. That was the deal with my father. You have to go to law school. So that's a big story. You have to go to law school. Don't worry, we'll catch up. We'll say all this because it's very, very important to entrepreneurship. Everything I'm telling you. So you have to go to law school. So I decided to quit my job at GMAC and go get ready, write the law school's admissions test. I was still young. So every Friday, I hang out with my university friends. So one of them, a white guy, had interest in me. Remember, there was no internet. We had those phones, you know those rotary dial? That's what we had those days. Newspapers is what we had. You write your resume, typewriter. I don't feel old though, you can see. I don't feel old at all. But when I start thinking about, that's me, those days. So the guy said, hey, Wale, there's a job at CIBC. How God leads your path. He says, I think you'll be great. I was going to law school, remember? So I was already studying for my LSAT. So I did not fight. I said, okay, no problem. This was on a Saturday night. So I knew I was not going to apply. Do you know, on Sunday evening, this guy calls me and says, hey, Wale, have you applied for that job yet? I said, no. He says, wait, go and get a pen. He started reading the ad to me from the newspaper. I was not writing anything down. I was lying down on the couch watching TV. Then something said to me, this guy who doesn't have any interest in you is trying to help you. Don't be a loser. So I finally got a pen. At the time, we were young university graduates, my wife and I. So my wife, we had one car. I used to drive her downtown, bring the car home, and go and study. So he says, are you ready? So I quickly wrote the address, and of course I had a resume ready those days. So I figured if I dropped her, I would go and drop the resume. And they won't hire me, and then I will satisfy this guy. So I took the resume, I drove my wife, I went to drop it at 550 Fifth Avenue. I'll never forget. CIBC, 550 Fifth Avenue. Made my life. I dropped it. Do you know that by the time I got home, there was a call from CIBC? My answering machine was beeping. Hey, I picked it up. Oh, we saw your resume. They love the GMAC thing. That's why I said it made my life. They said, we'd love to interview you. So the woman now said, call. I called back. She says, can you come this afternoon for an interview? This was Monday. Remember? This was still Monday. I said, sure. I was home. So I went for an interview. The woman said to me, I'm interviewing 10 people. I'm hiring 4. And just letting you know, right off the bat. By the time I finished the interview, the woman said, listen, you already got this job. You're number 1. So that's how I got the job. I went into CIBC. It was like it was made for me. It was my personality. Remember that word. It's who you are. It's your passion. When you do something that you are passionate about, results come without effort. And I got there. I think I was 25 years old. I became a branch manager at the age of 28 at CIBC. 28 years old. The first black person, to God be the glory, in this province. Those days, remember what I told you, they didn't see people like me. But somehow, that's why I said it is grace. But now I'll tie to St. Lucia. So, of course, my dad, he was proud, but he wanted me to be a lawyer. You know, Nigeria, you have to be a lawyer, engineer, doctor. That's it. Anything else is a failure. So I was still a failure. Maybe accountant too. So every time I talk to him, oh, Dad, I got promoted. Oh, that's great. When are you going to law school? Every time, no matter what I did. And things went on. I kept getting promoted. I won't tell you my ordeal because that's a story in itself about perseverance and how I became a manager. It was nobody gives you anything. You fight for it. But I won't go there. What now happened? I was going to leave because I keep getting headhunted at CIBC. So they gave me this job in the West Indies. This job is used to reward people who have done well for the bank and they're 5 years away from retirement because it's like a big vacation. They gave it to me at the age of 35. No other manager of Royal Bank was in his 50s. All of them were late. I was a young man doing this job. I never even appreciated it until much later in life. I just came back from the West Indies on Monday. I don't know whether you know that. So I still have the ties with that region. Anyway, so why am I telling you all this? I'm telling you all this that the entrepreneurial spirit is in each and every one of us. We just don't open. It's like an onion that's deep inside that you need to open up. And so that leads to where we're going. Okay, now, how do we go out? Okay, one more. Okay. Now, this presentation can be interchanged. It's not linear. It's not 1 leads to 2, leads to 3, leads to 4. It's the concepts I want you to get. Some of it you probably already know. It's like someone comes up with an idea, and you say, but I knew that, but you never did anything about it. That's what this is about. Everything I'm telling you, you need to do something about it, or you need to do something with it. That's what brings results. Topic, employee to employer. That implies you're going to make a transition. Is that not correct? Now, that mindset is big. Making a transition from employee to employer. Why is it going there? I want to go to understanding the transition. Oh, there it is. It keeps going back there. Yeah, it keeps going back. Okay. To do this, you need a mindset shift. I remembered the first time. You know how you get paid every 2 weeks, bi-weekly? I remember the first time my paycheck didn't come. It's been coming for the last 20 years. All of a sudden, no more paycheck because I've left the bank. Like I said, I won't bore you with all those details. The only thing I knew was I was going to own several businesses. That's what propelled me to leave and move on, or take a package and move on. When you leave stability for risk, it's a big mind shift for any entrepreneur. You are leaving structure to less structure. You know, when you go to work, you have ways of doing things. All of a sudden, you are the boss. You are the boss. And when you are the boss, guess what? Less structure. You are jumping all over the place. And every decision you make impacts your bottom line. In a corporation, you work in a team. If you screw up, somebody picks it up. It doesn't work like that here. So it's a big shift. You have the sole responsibility for the outcome of whatever you get. And when you're an entrepreneur, you have to keep adapting and learning. Do not be cheap. You spend money on knowledge. You need to take courses. You need to seek out how to be on the edge of whatever you do. Because if there's no formula, magic formula for success. It's you recreating yourself time and time and time again. Financial versus lifestyle motivations. That's also key. I'll tell you. I'll give you my own example. I told you I wanted to be this entrepreneur. The day I left CIBC, I had 80 people reporting to me, either directly or indirectly. I did 80 appraisal reports. I signed off on it. And you know what happens with employees? Egos. I got tired of dealing with egos. So I decided I'm going to have a boutique where I deal with only me. No egos. Now, that drives how big I want to get. When you understand? So if you say, you know what, I want to own Calgary, that's my goal, then you're going to scale up rapidly. But if you decide, I just want a small boutique and do what I want, then it drives you a different way. So that's also very, very important. And those are things you must think about if you want to be an entrepreneur. I know I'll give you examples in our community that I see. And some of it might be controversial, but I think it's good. It gives examples of what could or could not happen when you don't follow steps. Self-doubt. Do you think the day you walk out and start a business, you believe I could do it? You could say it out, but deep down, you're like, I'll give you one example today. We're up there talking, and one of the men said to me, what if this doesn't work? Like, doesn't work like this, like what we had. Well, guess what? That's life. Life happens. But one thing you must believe is in YOU, capital. You need to believe in you. Those are barriers. When you start having self-doubt, that's why a lot of people never take the next step. That lack of confidence. So very, very important. Now, the next step is tapping into local resources. When you want to do, when a lot of us, we want to open a restaurant, for instance. We need to understand, yes, it might be a Niger restaurant. It might be a Ghanaian restaurant. But who is your market? A lot of us think it's Nigerians or Ghanaians or Chinese. No, it's Calgary. Who are your competitors? Every restaurant that exists in Calgary. We don't seem to understand that. You need to understand how big the industry is. Is the restaurant industry $2 billion in Calgary? Because you want to tap into that. When you think you drill down from the top, you are likely to come up with better plans. Okay, now, these are areas you need to go into to be able to get resources to help you with, I will drill down on that as we go forward, with your business. Calgary Economic Development Council. When Olu of Warri came, and I was in charge of that, I liaised with Calgary Economic Development. You'll be amazed at a lot of resources they have that our people do not tap into. You know, call them, have a meeting. They have representatives. Give them your idea. They will help you. ATB, every bank for that matter, has something similar, an entrepreneurial center. They give ideas, they help with whatever you are thinking. The problem is a lot of us were afraid of banks. They won't give it to me anyway. They won't give it to you anyway because you're not playing the game. Banks are there for money. They want to give money to people. But we do not come up with proper plans. That's why. But when you sit down with someone who is knowledgeable, they'll be able to help you come up with a good concrete plan. I'll come back to that. Calgary Chamber of Commerce. You will be shocked when you go to the chamber website, all the resources they have for businesses. In fact, not just businesses, areas of businesses you want to get into. Let's say you want to go into, I'm just throwing something out, mechanized farming. They have a division that would help you with that. You want to go into jollof rice cooking. Oh, by the way, that's a big deal now. I was in the West Indies, and I go to a restaurant, jollof rice being sold in the West Indies. So we have something. 2 weeks ago, I happened to be in Toronto for Caribana. There was a big stand. Come and see the lineup. You know what they were selling? Jerk chicken and jollof rice. Come and see lineup. I'm giving you business ideas now. We need to think creatively, not just jollof rice and a stew. You can do a fusion. You know, think outside the box. Okay? There's a group called A100. This is for much younger people. It's technology. They help. It's an incubator for technology. If you have ideas, I know there's a lot of bright Nigerians who have patented stuff. Those are the ones I know. Look, these guys are there. It's attached to the University of Calgary. And it's a non-for-profit, which means they get funding from outside the banks, or they give it to them to give to others and help others. So that's another resource you should use. Rainforest Alberta is another one. Again, it's an incubator for businesses. Of course, Innovate Calgary, the name speaks for itself. It's technology. If you have great ideas, they're willing to sit down with you. Alberta women entrepreneurs, women, they want you. They need you. They want your resources, especially people of color. If you have good ideas, contact them. Okay, funding programs. Program from Alberta Innovates. That's the one I mentioned on top. Then there's something called the Western Economic Diversification that this is from the government. They want to make sure that, especially immigrants who are coming in with ideas. You know, one of the things that we do not understand is that we come with unique talents. You remember when I talked about self-doubt? That's what holds us back. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit another story. So when I told you I rose in CIBC. So my first posting, after I was in a management training program. After I came out, they made me a loans officer. Back in those days, loans officers were big. You give loans. You understand? So people want you, except the bank was starting to change. They want loans officers to bring business in. The folks in the bank were not used to it. But I'm a Lagos boy. I'm sorry, those of you know. I'm a Lagos boy. So when I got my position, I would go on McLeod Trail. You know McLeod Trail? Those days, there's still remnants of it. Car dealerships on McLeod Trail. Mobile home dealerships on McLeod Trail. I think at the time, my branch, Chinook, CIBC Chinook Mall was my branch. I think our target was like $12 million for the whole branch. What, of course, long time ago, $12 million. For just as a point of reference, a brand new Mercedes-Benz at the time sold for $20,000. A brand spanking new Benz. We had a Hyundai. I think we bought a Hyundai for $2,500, brand new. So just Hyundai Pony. You remember that? That's what we had. Just so when you had 12 million, it's a lot of money. And they put this young kid and a few other, 4 of us, to be bringing it. That branch was not doing well. So guess what I did? This is where I'm saying it so that you think about that when you are doing stuff. I told my manager, don't worry, with my big mouth, I'm going to get this target. So in the mornings, I would go out on McLeod Trail and go and knock at the car dealerships. I had business card. Good morning. I asked for the sales manager. Listen, my name is Wale Gbalajobi. I'm from CIBC. I'm looking to see if you had any car loans that you would like CIBC to do for you. They were fascinated by me because they never saw anybody my color before. And this young kid is coming to, so they listen. And then at the end of the day, they'll say, no problem. I'll leave your card. I leave my card. I go back. I go to the mobile home dealership, same thing. Those days, a mobile home would sell for about $35,000, $40,000. That's big. I give them my card. I was doing this. Every week, I'll call back. Hey, Don, how you doing? Wale from CIBC. I'm just trying to see, is there anything I can help you with? No, nothing. They kept rejecting until one day, I had called this man. The business is called Homes Canada. I called this man at Homes Canada. He was the owner. His name is Rick Warren. I'm telling you all this because those are people that changed my life. So I called Rick. I said, Rick, it's Wale again from CIBC. Is there anything I can do? He said, you know what? Yes. Bank of Montreal just turned on my loan. If you do this loan for me, I'll start giving you lots of loans. I said, sure. Remember, there was no email. You know those faxes that fade? That's what we had. So I said, can you fax it to me? He faxed this thing. I didn't even have too much experience, but I had spunk. I went to my manager. I said, look, I got this deal. Can we do it? The guy looked at it. My manager says, yeah. Can they get a co-signer? So I called the guy. I said, can you get a cosign? I said, yes, my father-in-law. Bam, that's how we did that loan. From that day, I became a hero at CIBC. I was getting business, like that's what propelled my move. What I'm saying that to you, that's the spirit of an entrepreneur. Use that spirit. Use your Niger sense. It's an advantage. Our Niger sense is an advantage. Ghanaians here? Ghanaian sense, advantage. Canadian sense, advantage. So, exactly. You're my sister. Oh. My mother is a Savage. Her name is Savage. Yes. Okay, so, the Jamaican sense. All right. Yes, Jamaica? West Indian sense. Oh, yeah, that they get lots. But you get my point. I'm building this up with what takes a person from an employee to an employer, because some of that you already have inside you, innate. We now need to think, how do we do it? In my research, I heard about a Nigerian who became very big because he was in technology. And they were building some system. A Nigerian, that was in Vancouver, by the way. They were building some system. Remember, what do they do in Nigeria? They keep taking power. So when this guy built the system, he had put in a backup power. When the company failed, one day, life happened. No more power. The guy said, I got that. I put in this backup. They were never used to that. He became a hero because he used his Niger sense. You get it? So always think outside that box. Use the gift of multiculturalism that God gave you, that placed you in this province. You'll be shocked at the results. Okay. Networking in a new environment. Okay. You need to understand the Calgary economic landscape. Remember, I was building something for you just now. I said you want to cook. You want to have a restaurant. And you're thinking, I want to cook for Nigerians. Yeah? You may want to cook for Nigerians. You may want to cook for Saro people. Or you may want to cook for Jamaicans. You may want to cook for Ghanaians. But you know what? You need to learn to cook for 1.5 million people, because that's where your profitability lies. It's not, don't be too insular. Think global, think big. I always ask, and you probably always ask too. When I go to a Nigerian restaurant and I want to buy jollof rice and stew, they're going to sell it to me for $30. And I go to by the way, same thing with Jamaicans. They sell it to me for $30. But I go to Chinese restaurant. I want fried rice and stew. They sell it to me for $15. Are they not using the same rice? Are they not buying the same meat? What is it about them that makes our food so expensive? They use spices too. That's a consideration. We don't price right, and we're not targeting right. But just think about that example, because it's something that always irks me, that I'm paying more for my own food when I can pay less for the same basic food, except taste different. Okay? If a Nigerian can find that formula, they're going to blow in this city. So I just gave you another business idea. So do your business plan well. We'll get to that. Build connections. Attend local business events. Some of us, I'll tell you, even that work in traditional jobs, we won't attend corporate events. It's a bad thing, oh. You must show that you are part of the fabric of that group. Now, it becomes even more important when you own your own business. You must go out there. You must network. Through that, you get ideas, you meet people, they meet you, they know who you are. Guess what? You're adding people to your LinkedIn, to your Facebook, to your WhatsApp, to your whatever. Those are potential clients. We cannot be doing business and say, I don't have time, or I don't have time. I'm too busy. That also says something when you're too busy. So, network. Okay, again, it's all part of network, entrepreneurial groups. I gave you a whole bunch of groups just now. Join them. Engage with local business support and incubators. Incubators, there are lots of them in what I gave you. Now, let's get to the real key of this. Legal and financial foundations. I've told you some of the things you need to do, but when you set up a business, there are certain things. Are they opening it for me? Yes, okay. Yeah, there are certain things you need to do. For instance, one of the issues that we have, I'm not picking on anyone who has a restaurant. You know, here, the restaurant business is very heavily regulated, okay? When you want to open a restaurant, you need to understand the rules. You need to understand the health restrictions. You need to understand that you could kill someone and they could sue you. Seriously, because we cannot think Niger or Ghanaian or Sierra Leonean or Jamaican or Canadian. We have to think entrepreneurial. What are the issues that might be there? Understand it implicitly so that you create a great business. Sorry, I'm not even reading my own. Let me go into legal requirements. Okay. Research and understand the legal landscape. I've mentioned that. Seek professional guidance. I've given you a whole bunch of resources you could use. Government resources, lots of non-profits in that group I gave you. Okay, I need more. I need that again. That one, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, it's not anyway, what it is basically business connectors and organizations. Use them. For instance, let's assume you're needing money and you go to one of these groups I mentioned. They can't help you, but they'll connect you to somebody else who may be able to help you. Make sure you use them. Okay, let's get out of here. Financial, of course. This is the key. Where, by the way, I don't know whether you know these statistics. You know why banks don't loan money to businesses? I'll tell you. 90% of new businesses fail. 90% of new businesses fail. You know why? People have ideas in their head, and they just go and do it with little proper research. That's why banks do not, I'm telling you from an insider, they are very skeptical. That's why they ask you, bring 2 years financial, always 2 minimum. There's a reason. They want to see a pattern of you creating cash. If you haven't, don't even bother, waste your time. Except now they're changing when it comes to technology where it's in the head. And in fact, that's a big area of conflict for them. They don't know how to deal with that. But generally, traditional businesses, 2 years financials they need. Okay, can you, I don't know if this can move, I'm not sure why it's not. I need my number 1. The number one is do a business plan. I know in my head that's what it is. Okay, what is the business plan? What am I doing? Who am I doing it with? Who are my customers? What do they eat? Where do they go to church? I'm serious. You need to know everything about your potential clients. It's a lot of work, but if you can do it, you'll be shocked. You know them implicitly. You know who to target, you know who to market to. You know? Okay. Yeah, okay. We talk about the can you go into number one? Go inside it. Okay. So I just talked about your plan has to be very, very, very detailed. If it's detailed, you will not be part of the 90. You'll be part of the 10 that succeed. Remember I just said something just now. I talked about food industry. Why it's so expensive. If you can get that right, you are going to change the food landscape. Imagine someone cooking from home is still charging you the same as a Chinese restaurant that has staff. Does it make sense? It means we haven't done our work properly. We're just buying stuff. We're buying overpriced. Sorry, I hope nobody, but I'm talking as a businessman. We're buying overpriced stuff. That's all it means. Because they're buying the same rice, like I said, at the risk of repeating myself. Okay. Okay. Number 2, take care of your own personal expenses. Okay. You cannot manage other people's business when you can't manage yourself. You have to internal cleanse. You cannot take money from the business when it hasn't made money and use it to pay your bill. So before you go into a business venture as an entrepreneur, you look at yourself and say, do I have enough money to survive? I'll give you my own personal story. So when I decided to go on my own, I made sure I had 1 year's income aside. So I gave myself 1 year to succeed. But remember, this is how it works. Day 1, you make 0 income. The second month, you'll make some. The third month, you start growing, you start growing, you start growing. Within 8 months, I did not need the money I put aside anymore. So I gave you that so that it's clear what I'm saying. You need to be ready. You cannot just go and say, I don't know how many Yorubas are here, but that's what's coming to my mind. I'm Beloni. No, you can't do that. You have to be precision-like a surgeon. What's it going to cost me in the next 12 months or 24 months to set up my own business? And you put that aside. You cannot take, another thing. I know you know this. This one you'll know. So you set up a business, and you pay yourself a salary from your business. That's how you should do it. Not because you see money, you spend it. So someone sells yams, as an example. So they make $5,000 in sales. They blow it, boom. What do you think is going on? Their capital is being eroded. Okay. Their capital is being eroded, is what's going on. So you must make sure that you are using your, you're paying yourself a salary. If there's no money, don't pay yourself. Simple. You need to have goals. What are the goals? I mentioned when I left the bank, I decided I did not want to manage egos anymore. I wanted a boutique. At the time, you need to know what you're doing. That's a goal. Marketing plan. You cannot succeed without a marketing plan. You must have a plan of where your customers are going to come from, where you're going to find them, how you're going to interact with them, how much you want from them. All this must be broken down. Of course, you use an accountant for this. We're almost done. We're talking about personal finance. Let's go back. Oh, hire experts. Have a mentor. Very, very important. Have a mentor. Don't do it alone. There are people who understand your journey, who have succeeded. Okay? And guess what? They will be able to mentor you. I remember somebody came to me once. It's very humbling. And she says, hey, I want you to be my mentor. I said, why? He said, I don't know whether I'll use soccer example. I won't use hockey. I don't know how many of you, I know the hockey example, but she used the hockey example for me. She says, when I want to learn to play soccer, I'll just use that, paraphrase, I go to Pelé. You understand? Go to someone who you can see success in. Don't go to someone you are better than to be mentoring you. Do you understand? Okay, let's go to conclusion. Hire the right people. Let's go to conclusion. Escape. Oh, maybe okay. Take me to the beginning, please. Okay. The bottom line. This is the conclusion. We individually are all successful people. We just don't believe it. When you embark on entrepreneurial journey, I've talked about when you embark, you follow all these steps. You start with a defined business plan. You take care of your personal finances, as I mentioned. You choose the right structure. That's another one. Okay, there are 3 ways you could set up a business. Sole proprietorship, JV, and incorporated. Sole proprietorship is just Wale Gbalajobi Limited, and all my money goes into my account. Corporation is incorporated. It's separate from you. You are just the face behind it, but it's a total separate legal entity. Then the third one is joint venture. You may want to do it with other people. Those are the 3 structures. You have to decide how you do it. Structures can also kill a business, but that's a topic for another day. Know the structure you're going to use. If you have I've talked about budget, I've talked about detailed plan, I've talked about mentor, I've talked about coach, I've talked about structure. If you do all these things and you bring your uniqueness, you will succeed. Thank you. Thank you.